Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Daniel Escobar, a Real Talk El Paso volunteer. This is Real Talk, Real Topics. And as you can see, I'm joined by the CEO and Executive Director of this fine organization, my friend and brother in Christ, Julian Morales. And as we wait for people to jump in and join us, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Real Talk Youth Impact Program, we are a nonprofit organization that takes ex offenders and volunteers who are willing to share their stories and experiences with children ranging from 8 to 18 years old in hopes that they do not follow in our footsteps, and showing them that a life of crime and gangs, drugs, and incarceration only leads to destruction. And through our Change One meetings, we seek to enlighten, encourage, and empower at risk youth to become tomorrow's leaders. We offer funding for after school activities, and to date, Real Talk has helped over 900 children and funded over $96,000 worth of extracurricular activities of their choice. And unfortunately, due to the decline in donations and this virus situation, we've had to put that funding on hold for now. So I want to encourage you guys to please share, to support us, donate. Go to realtalkep.org and click on the donate now button. If you can't help us financially, please help us in spreading the word about Real Talk. Share this video, like our page, and if you're interested with us, please don't hesitate to contact us through the website or through our Facebook page. So without further ado, Julian, I know you gave us a brief intro a few days ago on what you're going to talk about today.
Yes.
This will probably turn into a series of videos because I know that you've shared your story, your testimony before, but I feel like you've only scratched the surface. And if I'm not mistaken, you want to go back to the genesis, so to speak, of your
Yes.
life, where your story and where your journey all started. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for first of all for wanting to do this with us, Danny, and taking the time to. How's the sound on your side? Is it good?
Yes, you're cutting in and out, brother, but you're good.
Okay. So thank you. First and foremost for taking the time to do this with me, and like you said, I've touched on my story many of times. People that have gone to our real talks or that have heard me speak somewhere, and I brush lightly on these subjects of my life and major milestone events that have happened. And today I want to start a series where I'm going back to the beginning and sharing where it all began. And chapter one will end today, where my mom, my 42-year-old mother, tells me that she's pregnant with my little sister. So today's first chapter is going to be just about the beginning and where I come from and what molded me at such a young age. And at the beginning of this, at the end of this whole series, I'm going to have a chapter where I recap everything that I've learned, because not only is it important that we share our experiences and what we went through and what we were feeling and what we feel now about it, but those lessons that we learned from it, I believe, is the most important part we should share. So at the end of my whole story, if you guys stick around, for those of you that care to listen, I appreciate it. And if this isn't for you, that's fine. Thank you. Keep supporting our channel, though. Keep sharing our videos. But I want to go back and recap everything that I've been through and put it into perspective as to who I am now and why I think the way I do and why I approach things the way that I do. And it's all through these lessons and these experiences that I'm going to share with you guys. So it all started in 1982. I was born here in El Paso to an immigrant mother, and my mother's from Chihuahua. She came over from Mexico. From the stories that I know, at the age of 14 with her sister, they took the train, they crossed over, and they made a life here in El Paso, right? So by the time I was born in 1982, my mother was living there on Lawson Street and the Devil's Triangle, also known as the FDR neighborhood, the Franklin Roosevelt's, and that's where the FDR projects are. And my first memory, I believe, is like at 4 or 5, and I'm walking to elementary school, and it used to be a five block walk straight up Lawson Street from the park, and the park was the mainframe of the neighborhood. And I would walk to school and get there early and stand outside for breakfast, and the cafeteria ladies knew me, and I would go so early so I can get 2 rounds, right? because obviously I'm a fat kid. I've always been a hungry kid, right? But that's where we would feed ourselves more, and then we'd go wait outside and get the first round, and then go back and get the second round. And I had a pretty normal upbringing in school. I was in ESL classes up until third grade. Spanish was my first language, and our school was a low income school, Wainwright Elementary. And by the time I got to second grade, there had already been a shooting there, a block from the school. One of the guys from FDR had been killed there. So I was already experiencing somebody being shot, someone that I knew, someone's brother that went to school with me, second grade, and I was already experiencing these things. In third grade, I remember walking to school, and there was a dead body in the park. They had broken into a house up the street, and the Northeast Trece guys had lived there in our neighborhood as well. And they had shot somebody and killed them at the park. Right. So about that age, third grade, I'm going to school, living in this neighborhood, what I think is normal. Running around barefoot half the time. I was never at home. I wasn't one of those kids that was ever at home. I was always out in the neighborhood. Like I said, at the park across the street. Around third grade, my mom started dating a man, and she took a lot of her attention away from me, and I there was some molestation going on between my cousin was doing it to me, and at that age, I started getting into a lot more trouble and fighting at school. There was a kid at our school, Walter. He had already taken a gun to school. I mean, this is the environment we grew up in, and this was all normal to us, right? One of my friends had already been shot for selling crack in the alley behind our apartments. I had experienced a lot of bad things. So when this happened to me, it kind of snapped something in me. And I remember a milestone day in my life, and we were in the park and we are playing soccer, and this big kid in the neighborhood starts picking on me, and he beat the living crap out of me. And my brother watched.
Wow.
My brother watched, and it was, as an older brother, it was a lesson. One, I had a smart mouth on me, but I got beat that day, and ever since that day, I promised myself that nobody would ever do that again. So it it took out everything that I had already seen as far as violence. There was a lot of gangbanging in our neighborhood. You had the Do Rock Crips, you had the FDRs, you had the Northeast Trece, you had Northeast Villains, you had the black gangs of folks that were in our neighborhood. So I had already experienced all of this gangbanging. As a kid, I was already tribalized into being associated with the Mexican kids and defending our Mexican turf. And so it was already embedded in me, right? It was already, the seed was already there. So when this happened, it took this rage out of me, and I remember beating up this kid, Jason Areola, in third grade in Mrs. Wall's class, and knocking over a desk. I closed the door in the classroom, and I told this kid, "You're about to get beat up," in front of the teacher, in front of all the kids. And I started taking off on him, and he started running around the classroom, and I was knocking over all the desks. The teacher was about 70 years old, and she couldn't handle it. I ended up knocking her over, beat up this kid. And I got paddled. Back in the day, we were still getting paddled. The principal there was Miss Becknell. And I ended up breaking her leg at the end of that year. And through all of this, I never got disciplined at home. My mom couldn't handle me. My father wasn't in the home. My mom couldn't deal with my anger, with my rage, and being such a fat kid and a big kid, and she was scared. The last time my mother hit me, she broke her hand. She hit me on the back of the head, and her hand broke. And that was the last time that she put hands on me, right? And grounding, I didn't know what grounding was. I would get home and be in the streets all day. So it was already embedded into me. I've already seen the acts of violence, the rumbles in the park between the black gangs and the Mexican gangs. I had already seen Latin Legacy come and shoot one of the homies, Mousy, in back of the building, because they were back there playing handball and they were rival enemies. And we're at the park, and all we hear is gunshots, and they were shooting at the FDR. I had already experienced all of this. I had already built a hate towards other people. I already knew what it was to be on full mode attack. So it was really easy when that happened to me, when I got molested, and when everything came up and bubbled up to the surface. It was so easy for me to react and to be full of anger. You know, I was a bully in school, disrespectful, out of control, man. And the lack of a man being in my life, somebody grabbing a hold of me and snapping me into reality of this isn't the way to go. Now I had my uncle Jim, rest in peace, who was in my life, and he attempted to, but ultimately I'm not his son. You know, I wasn't his son. You know, I've lived as a step parent. And I have a child of my own, and a lot of people say you can love another child as your own. From my personal experience, it's impossible, and and I understood that people in my life that tried and gave up. It wasn't that they gave up; it was that I pushed them away. Ultimately, I'm not their responsibility, and I should have appreciated the love they were giving me, the time. Now that I know what time is worth, now that I know how valuable time is, and how time is worth even more than money, for me to look back and think these people spent a weekend with me, trying to take me camping, speaking into me. They took that time out of their life, and I didn't appreciate it. I disregarded it as somebody attempting to just be mean to me because I didn't get my way, or somebody not allowing me. My uncle Jim attempted to rip my nose ring out with pliers, and I ended up taking it out. And I used to think,
Wow.
what a mean man! He threatened me with pliers, and all he was doing was trying to set me straight, and trying to set me down into reality of what life really is and prepare me for the world. But I wasn't willing to listen. So it turned into anger, and right about fifth grade, sixth grade, it turned into just beating people up for no reason. Going into middle school, I went straight into alternative school. Um, and our alternative school at Canyon Hills Middle School, there's a ramp, and on the bottom was an old gym, an old locker where football players used to dress up and suit out before the games. But then they built a new gym, so this was a classroom. They had us in the basement, in cubicles and shower stalls, and I would get a cold sandwich for breakfast, cold sandwich for lunch, and then you left an hour before everybody else got out of school so that you wouldn't have contact with the other kids, right? And this was all because of my actions, because of my anger, beating people up, and being aggressive with the teachers. I had been taught at a young age that that's how you dealt with problems, was physically. There was I would get spanked by my mom, um, which I deserved, 100% of the time. But that was a way to handle something, was violence. And in the neighborhoods, when we had problems, we handled it violently. And so at school, what do you do is you handle it violently. And there was a lot of fights. There was a lot of race wars growing up, in my middle school. Before shootings were popular, we got shot up by the Viennese there at school while we were all at lunchtime. Some kid rolled up, walked up, and they started shooting at us. Um, so all of this was embedded in me at a young age. So it was very easy for me, Danny, to turn to violence, to turn to putting the fear in people. We lived in these apartments, on Lawson Street. Like I said, my mom managed them, and they were drug infested. There was drug dealers. There was a gang violence. There was, man. I grew up with kids. I was telling my Susie, my wife, the other day. We were watching a movie about Angel Fernandez, the rest in peace, that child that got beat to death by his parents in California, and it triggered a memory of these two kids I remember growing up with, and their mom beating them with an extension cord, and CPS being involved, and the cops coming, and me telling my mom, and then they ended up getting taken away, and I felt so bad. And you know I was dealing with adult problems as a child already, and it affected me in an adult way, but I was a child and didn't have the adult capacity to filter all of that, to process it. So it messed me up, and it messed me up in a big way, Danny. And you know, that's the lessons that I learned and that I try to apply now as a father with my son. Is I don't get I attempt, because we're not perfect, but I attempt not to have him see or to deal with adult problems at his age right now, right? Um,
Yes.
I and it's not that I try to make his life as easy as possible. I've been told um, that I pamper him a little too much, and maybe that is something wrong that I'm doing, but I don't want him to experience and have to deal with those things at this age, when the only things he should be
Yes.
worrying about is going to school, having a girlfriend, keeping his grades up, what college he's going to, what's
Yes.
what's he gonna do at homecoming. I hope he's still a virgin by then, right? And am I gonna lose my virginity tonight? Like those things that I never experienced. I never went to a prom. I never went to a homecoming. Never graduated anything. I dropped out of school. Sixth grade was really like the last year that I was mentally in school, right? Um, so I want all of those lessons and everything that I've learned through that and how it affected me. I'm trying to change that, because I did cause a lot of that for Juju up until 2018,
Yeah.
when God came into my life, and I decided to make a change. I did give him a lot of those things to worry about, and abusing him, and it's unfortunate. I'm fortunate to I consider myself still semi young age at 37 to have changed. My son was 13, and life has changed for both of us, and a lot of it is me being able to reflect on those things that happen and how protective I am with him, going to stay with somebody, and with my molestation and the things that happened. And that cousin that did that to me later down the road, his kids got molested. And before I got saved, and my outlook on life was different. I used to laugh at that, and I used to tell him, you reap what you sow. And once I got saved, I had to call him, and even though he didn't know that I wished that, and that I was happy that happened to his kids at that time. Once I got saved, and I realized everything and how it affected me, and I asked him for forgiveness for even saying that I was glad that happened to his kids, because I realize now what it caused me, and the damage that it might cause those children. And I see them now as young adults, and the problems in their lives and where their lives are headed. And I know that a lot of that had to do with them being molested as well. So, it was the anger that I had to deal with, to let go, being mad at him. And since then, I've forgiven him. We've been on camping trips. We've we've gone out and hung out.
Hmm.
I've learned to understand that he himself had been through something, and he himself was acting out on what he had been taught, and that ultimately is what I want to convey with my message. A lot of the times we look at people that do bad things and we assume they're just bad people. We might see a woman at the grocery store with a Lone Star card with 4 kids, one on her hip, one in diapers, and we're quick to pass judgment and say, "Oh,
Yes.
what a little skeezer, what a this, doesn't have those baby daddies in her life." When ultimately, God calls us to look at people and look at their heart, and instead of seeing somebody that is out here doing wrong, it's somebody that has been wronged. It's somebody in their life that has been through something that has caused them to be this way, right? And that's what I like. I'd like
Hmm.
for people to get out of my whole story, once it's done and complete and shared with you guys, is that don't look at somebody with tattoos and somebody that's been to prison like myself, as somebody that's bad. And when I say I've been in prison, don't look at me as somebody that's bad. 100% of us that are in prison have been molested, have been abused, have witnessed abuse, have witnessed a murder. How many of you out there have witnessed a murder? I see
Mm.
this thing right now happening with these riots and stuff. I lived through a bunch of riots, and I have PTSD because of riots, and I act out now because of that PTSD. What do you know? What? How many of you know what it is to watch a man be stabbed to death and scream for his last breath and smell the iron in his blood as it's coming out?
Wow.
How many of you have seen your dad get shot in the head? A lot of these guys in prison have these stories to tell. And it's not that we're bad people. And it's not that they're bad people and that they're making bad choices. It's that we've been trained to act
Yes.
out like that by our actions that we've seen around us. We've been affected by these things, by the molestation, by the abuse, by having parents that are drug addicts. So when you next time you see a felon, you see somebody that's struggling on the streets. You know, I used to be that person, quick to judge a homeless person, quick to judge an alcoholic, quick to judge a drug addict. And unless people start talking about this stuff, they'll never cure themselves. They'll
Yeah.
never find healing. You know,
You
it's
mentioned
hard.
so many.
Go
Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you there, Julian. You mentioned so many interesting things. You mentioned that this type of lifestyle of violence and chaos basically was the normal, I guess, the norm for you. You've obviously
Yes.
became sensitized to so many things, whether it be violence, whether it be gang activity, or even drugs. Uh, you pointed out a specific word, tribalism, and if you look at the world today, I mean, that's what's happening. You know, there's people that segregated themselves, whether it's based on race or based on an organization that you follow, or even like in gangs. You know, if you belong
Yeah.
to a certain gang, you know, that's your clique and your crew, and that's who you follow. And I just want you to point out, when was the moment where you said, basically, what am I doing with my life? You know, what was that pivoting change that you came to and say, you know what, this isn't for me, whether it was when you got incarcerated or when there you were saved? I mean, what was that
No, no,
specific
no.
moment when you said, you know what, I need to make a change?
So you know, as I look back, before ever meeting God, before ever coming to a side of a spirituality and wanting to be with Christ, I had made a change when I got out. So quick fun fact about me: I got out in 2008 for 3 weeks, and I got arrested again with 65 pounds of marijuana, and I went back to the state of
Wow.
Texas instead of federal prison. And when I got out of state of Texas, I decided in 2010 that that was it. I decided that I was gonna stop telling myself that the only thing I knew how to do was drug deal, that the only thing I knew how to do was gangbang, that the only thing I knew how to do was kick in doors and take stuff from people,
You believe in
and
that
that
lie,
nobody,
yes.
yeah, and that nobody would hire me because I was a felon. You know, I have
Mm.
five
Wow.
felonies: money laundering,
Yes.
tax evasion, organized crime, racketeering. You know, but I stopped believing that, and I said, when I get out, I'm gonna look for a
Mm.
job, and I'm gonna look, and I'm gonna apply, and I'm gonna go find my knack in this world, and I'm gonna make something of myself. So in 2010, when I got out, I as ugly as this sounds, I got out of one prison and into another prison. But and this will be down the road in my chapter. I believe that getting out and going into a relationship with this woman that I had before with three stepdaughters and Juju, without that, that was like a step down process for me coming into society. And as much as I look back and reflect on how much I hate that time of my life, of being with that woman, of losing those 4 years of time. When I look back and I honestly look at it, without her and without those kids and without Juju, I wouldn't be where I am right now. Even though I wanted the change, I needed something to be grounded to, and God wasn't in my life yet. So I used her as a grounding point and the kids, right? But it did help me, and that's when I decided, Danny, in 2010. And I went out and I found a job, and I started at $9 an hour, temporary labor, traveling with this company, no per diem, no insurance, sleeping in my car in the parking lots in Yuma, Arizona, in Carlsbad, New Mexico, until finally this company gave me a chance. This company gave me a chance, and they hired me full time. Adam Pego, if you're watching, it's all thanks to you, and rest in peace, Aaron. Without those two guys, man, I would have never been given the opportunity to move forward in my career.
Yeah.
Aaron got shot and died in Phoenix when we're out there working. Rest in peace. But they gave me the chance, and this company hired me. And I was as I got hired, as I went into this field of construction that I know nothing about. I can't even read you a tape measure, but I was a superintendent. I was the superintendent. I was in charge of master electricians. We were laying down
Wow.
high voltage cables, and I knew nothing about electricity, but I had great work ethic. I was
Wow.
excited about what I was doing, and I was always asking why. Why are we doing this? Where is it going? How does it work? Nah, nah, nah. They would tell me, go lay this cable over there, but why am I laying the cable for? What is it for? And then I saw the cleanest guy on the job site with the cleanest hard hat and the cleanest vest. And I asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm a safety guy. I said, how do I get into that? And he told me how. And I did it. And I did it. And I moved up in the career of safety. And I don't know if those of you guys that have ever worked construction, but I did not use a porta potty. I had a trailer, a whole trailer with a secretary. I had made it in the construction world. I was like, oh man, I made it. I have my own trailer. Then I went to like executive director of insurance and safety without an education. I don't even have a GED. But it was because I decided that that's what I wanted. I decided that I was done. I
Yeah.
decided that selling drugs wasn't the only thing I knew how to sell, because when I sold drugs, I had to sell myself. I had to make you think I was trustworthy for you to give me drugs to go sell. So I had a quality about
Wow.
me that I could use. I had a quality that the streets had given me, a quality that the dope game had given me. And I took that and I ran with it. And while I was in prison, I educated myself, man. I don't have degrees. I don't have a high school diploma, GD, but I read, I read, I read. I learned big words. I learned how to articulate myself. I learned how to speak. I learned how to carry a conversation. And I learned a lot. I learned a little bit about a lot. And when I stepped into that world with these white guys that are running these construction sites, and I'm the only Hispanic that's not wearing tools,
Yeah.
the only Mexican, if you guys want to call me that, that's not wearing tools in this
Mm.
industry of of people that are predominantly white, right? And the labor force is Hispanic. And here I am with a trailer. All of these guys that I used to supervise had their OSU banners, A&M banners where they graduated from, and I'm their boss. And I don't even have a GED to put on my wall.
Wow.
This is what I tell the kids. This is what I try to teach the kids. All these lessons that they're going through. When we go talk to these high school kids, and a lot of them have been already molested or in gangs or selling drugs, I tell them all of this that mix in a little bit of knowledge, mix in a little bit of schooling with it, and you'll be a force to be reckoned with. You'll be the
Mm.
sweetest tasting Kool-Aid anyone will want to drink, because it'll have the perfect mix, life experience and college books and high school and this education, and you'll be a force to be reckoned with. And I encourage them, educate yourself, not only in school, educate yourself in life. Out of everything that you're going through, like Dan Moeller says, and everything that you're getting, make sure that you're getting understanding. And what does that mean? It's
Mm.
understanding everything that you're going through and taking the good out of all the bad and running with the good and leaving the bad behind. And
Yes.
man, it's been so it's been so eye-opening to be able to sit back finally and reflect. And when I say reflect, I don't mean reflect on my thoughts, but to look in the mirror, to look in my eyes, to look in my soul, to look in my spirit, to look at myself and tell myself where it is that it was all my fault, where it is that
Yeah.
I dropped the ball, where it is that I could have done better, where it is that the
Yes.
system failed me, so that now I can try to change that system from within and make a difference for my community. I sit back and I reflect. Nobody was there. Nobody was there to help me out. I did have some great people, and I'm going to talk about them as the story moves forward. Leo, Miss Cusick, I had people in my life, but at that age, I didn't. At that young age, I didn't. We didn't have the community rec centers. I had the dude telling me, go deliver this 20 rock and I'll give you $2. So when the ice cream man comes, you could buy a snow cone. And I was like, okay. And then I started loving money. So these are all the things now that I've experienced. I know what the system is for my life, at least, not for anybody else, but for my community, for the people here in my community. I know what it is, and I'm trying to change that from the inside out. I built, we have built this community program to try to change the lives of these kids so that they don't go through what we go through. They don't believe the things that we believe, right? They believe in themselves so that they believe that they have the power. The power is of the people. The power is in you. And with God, you have all the power. And if we can get these
Amen.
kids to just believe that, to know it, and to believe it, man, this world would be an awesome place. And that's the whole thing about sharing our experiences and most importantly, the lessons in life. Um, you know, like I said, through those experiences, I'm using it to be a better father. I'm using it to be a better friend. I'm using it to be a better uncle, a better brother. Unfortunately, I don't have a chance to do that as a son anymore. My mom passed away, but I've taken all of these things that I've been through, and I apply them now to be a better person and to give those around me a better life because they deserve it. I tormented them for so long.
Mm.
I tormented them, and those people that loved me, my friends, my family. I caused so much torment in their life that that not that I owe them anything, but I owe it to them to give them the best. I owe it to every single person around me, to my neighbor, to the stranger at the store. You know, we leave this wake of destruction behind us in the wrath of our anger, in the wrath of our gangbanging,
Yes.
in the wrath of everything. We leave this destruction, this torment, this psychological issues. The people that I've knocked in, duct taped them, duct taped their babies. I've caused a lot of damage in this earth to people's minds, spirits, to people's souls.
Yeah.
People have nightmares, and I take all responsibility for that. And how do I take responsibility for that? Is living a better life, being the kind of person that God calls us to be, loving
Mm.
your neighbor and living for them and doing for them. And if there was more people like that in this world when I was a kid, that wouldn't have happened. Danny, when I was in prison, I studied Native
Yeah.
American religion studies. I studied a lot of religions. One of the things that I found really interesting about the Native Americans is every man would have a sex with the woman, and if the woman was pregnant and that man had sex with her, it could be 10 men that had sex with her while she was pregnant. And when that kid was born and that kid cried, every man picked up that child as their own. They didn't stop and say, hey, your baby's crying, come get this little freaking animal over
Mm.
here crying. Every person picked up
Wow.
that child because that child was the son of every single
Community.
man in that community. And us as men
Yes.
need to look at that, at our children, at these kids that are in these neighborhoods, those of us that don't have children, and
Yes.
man, and to step up, help out. A lot of these kids
Yes.
don't have fathers, and I
You know,
go ahead.
I know we're short on time, Julian. One of the biggest lies we hear is that we're products of our environment, and it's so easy, to go into that mentality of victimization and start blaming all these people, your family, your parents, basically what you didn't have, and you uh, basically blame it on them. But you came to that realization that this was me, this was my decision and my choices, and you know you came to that realization that you affected so many lives, not for the good but for the bad. And
Yeah,
you mentioned Dan Moeller, and I just wanted to share this with those that are viewing, and I think it's just powerful. Even if you're not spiritual or religious, I just thought it was something that we can all learn. And it says that you're not the product of what one person did, unless their name is Jesus.
Yeah.
Don't let what they did to you decide who you are. You know,
Yes.
you mentioned you were molested and you've gone through so many other things. Don't let what they don't see decide what you do see. I
Yeah.
mean, you believed in yourself regardless of people called you a felon and you were incarcerated, was it 13 years? I mean, you look past that, even beyond the people's opinions and what they said about you. And it goes on to say, your life is more than what they did to you. Your circumstance doesn't have to change in order for you to change.
Yeah.
So, man, if we can just believe in that and accept that, I mean, our lives would be so much easier, regardless if you've been in prison or not. And I think you're living testimony of that, that you can change. And I know it's not within your power. I know God had a lot to do with it, but it's just a matter of if you're willing to submit, to the things that have been holding you down and surrender to those lies that, you are not the product of your environment, that you can change and
Yeah.
that you can, change your life around. And it's not too late. As long as we have breath in our lungs, we can still repent. We can still change.
Yeah. And Danny, a lot of these other conclusions that I've come to in my life, I've analyzed situations, and I've come to the conclusion that it was all my fault because in my own household, I had an older brother in the same household, the exact same situation, the exact same neighborhood. And guess what? He graduated top one in high school, and he went
Wow.
on to have a great career and never got in trouble with the law. And my older
Wow.
sister, same thing. So I really had to look at myself and look at my family and look at my surroundings and my friends and those that
Yes.
grew up with me in my neighborhood and never got in trouble. And why is it that I did? Because I chose to. Because I chose to. It wasn't this system that was built. Once I got into the system was designed for me to fail,
Yeah.
definitely. But I put myself into that system. How 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 is it that everybody around me in my neighborhood didn't end up in prison? Not every single person ended up in prison. Not every single person that grew up on that street ended up shot or in jail or stabbed or doing drugs. Those of us that chose to did. Those of us that chose to become a product of our environment did. And those of us that chose not to didn't. And it's that simple. And until I looked at it that way and I realized that I can call myself out, until I accepted my faults, until I was able to say, man, you were wrong. You were
Mhm.
so wrong. You're
Yeah.
so far from reality. Then I realized and I stepped back and I said, wait a minute. How can I use that as an excuse that it was my home and my upbringing when my brother was raised in the same house. My younger sister was raised in the same house in the same neighborhood. My older sister was.
Yes.
The neighbor guy did, the one that I ran into years later, and he's some attorney now. And the other one that's a vice president of a bank here in El Paso, and they grew up a couple houses down. Another one that grew up four houses down on the same street next door to the
Wow.
house where the dead guy was found. And he's a realtor now.
Mm.
But because he made different choices, he made different choices.
Yeah.
She made
That's right.
different choices. Sandy Arellano, if you're watching, I know you follow us. You went to school with me. You're a cop now.
Mm.
You grew up on the same block that I did. You just chose to do something different. And what I
Yes.
chose for myself wasn't good for me. And
Mhm.
and Danny, it's so easy to become a product of the environment that you allow yourself to be thrown into. I was
Yes.
institutionalized at a very young age. Like I said, I was under the ramp eating sandwiches. Like if I was in jail since sixth grade, Raymond Tay's Academy, and then when I went to prison, it wasn't even shock therapy. It was like, I've been doing
Yeah.
this. I've been doing
Mm.
this, staring at walls all day. I've been eating cold sandwiches. What else you got for me? It's like watching
Wow.
Scarface. And there's nothing that you can do to me that 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 Fidel hasn't done to me already.
Yeah.
like there's nothing you can do to me. But then I found out that there was,
Yeah.
and we'll find out about that later when I ended up in solitary. And here, And the funniest and the irony of all of this, the irony of this, Danny, is that the same jail that Scared Straight took me to, the same
Yes.
holding cell that I sat in when I landed from that plane from Fort Dix, New Jersey federal prison, and I landed here in La Tuna, and I sat in that same
Wow.
cell that I was there. And you know what I told
Deja vu.
myself when I was a kid? I told myself I'm going to be here as an adult because I want to see what's inside over there.
Wow.
That's where my mind was as a kid because that's what I had been trained to think. Because it was cool to come home from prison. You get a party. They throw you a party when you come home from prison. People give you money. But when you come home from the military or you come home from college, everybody tells you, here comes this dude que se cree muy bueno. Acá viene este
Mm.
vato que se cree muy americano. And nobody has
Yes.
nothing for you. But you come home
Yeah.
from prison, oh, shoebox full of money. Let's go party, strip club. So where would I want to come home from? College or from
Mm.
prison? I want to come
Wow.
home from prison. I want to come home from prison where when I get home, everybody's like, oh, Big Jew, you was in the joint. Oh, respect. Oh, puro respeto, homie. Julian. Uh, what?
Wow.
What? That, you know, that's the message that I want to give to these kids. And that's the message that this community, I believe, needs to hear. We need to encourage our kids to go to school. We need to encourage
Yes.
those good kids. I used to call Juju a nerd, and oh man, my kid's so weird. He's such a lame. He's such a square. I thank God he's such a square. I thank God he's a
Yes.
good. I thank God he's studying. I thank God that he wants to graduate. That he has a plan to go to college, and it's because my family has put that in his head. I have put that in his head. College, college, college. My nieces have led by example. Soleil, Haley, Sarah. Hey, they went to college. And if we don't put this into our kids, they'll never hear it. They'll never learn it. And they'll want to be the guy that comes home and is cool and is accepted and has
Yeah.
10 different
If we
friends
don't
in
speak
common.
into our kids, somebody else will, and that'll be usually the world, friends, and that's when they go wrong. So you're right. We need to start looking really closely at who's talking to our kids and who's feeding them. We're supposed to be doing that. But
Yes.
instead, we let social media, we let the culture, we let the world, everybody else accept us. Why? Because we're either too busy working or, we get home from work and we're too tired. So
Yeah.
we need to be up and at it, man, because it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough to be a parent. It's tough to be a father.
It's tough. It's tough, but it's a blessing. It's a
Yes,
blessing.
it
It's
is.
I didn't look at it as a blessing for a lot of years up until 2 years ago. As a single father, it was more like an anchor. He was more like a bother. And now that I truly see um, that he has a purpose in this life, that he's more valuable than I can ever imagine. Right? He's the most
Yes.
valuable thing that I have in my life is my son. And 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 if everybody had that mentality, and if you took care of your kids the way you do your cell phone, if you
That's
take
right.
care if you take care of your kids the way you wipe your rims down every day, and if you took care of your kids the way you go and you buy new clothes when the old one's raggedy after wearing it twice,
Yeah.
and if you took care of your kid as much as you do your job. That was my big fall as an adult, was chasing work, traveling, just because I'm sending home 45 an hour. I'm thinking I'm doing what a man's supposed to be doing when really I'm dropping the ball the most. I was dropping the ball the most. I wasn't there to guide my son, to guide him into the right path, to lead by example. The example I was giving him was have kids, leave them with your wife, and go work and just
Yeah.
send money home. And that's the responsibility of a parent. But that's not the responsibility of a parent. It's for us to speak life into our kids, to speak guidance into our kids, to
Yes.
give them the foundation of life, to build that foundation solidly, and not just speak it into them, but lead it by example and raise kids that can change this world. I'm raising my son and I'm putting these ideas in his head to be a politician, to be an attorney, to be someone that can make a change with law, to be someone that can go into these chambers and speak. to be put himself, to position himself to be heard, to position himself to make a change,
Yes.
to be the change. And man, I wish we would all raise an army of attorneys, of honest attorneys, an
Yes.
an army of honest doctors, and an army of honest politicians, political science majors that want to go in and change this world from within, change this whole system from within.
Yes.
Those of us that have been in the trenches and we know what this system is, we know what we're dealing with. Those of us need to be stepping up, raising these kids to be a force to be reckoned with.
I heard this once, Julian, that if you want to know the way your kids are going to turn out, to just look at yourself in the mirror. It starts with us. We need to set that example.
Yes.
I know that you've shared so many stories and experiences and mistakes that you've made, but I want to talk about, would you ever go back and change it? Because I know all those bad experiences made you into the person you are today. I know in my case, there's certain things that I would never take away because I can honestly not say that it wouldn't have brought me to where I am now, which is centered in Christ right now. So go ahead and talk about that. Is there certain things that you said, you know what, I wish I hadn't done that or this, have you said, you know what, that's part of my testimony and that made me change, so I wouldn't
No,
change that for.
as a I used to always say no regrets. A
Yeah.
lot of us that are in prison, like no regrets, no regrets.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't have any. And once I accepted the truth for what it was, I have a lot of regrets. My biggest regret is all the pain and hurt I caused my mother.
Yes.
And if I can take it all back just for that, I would. In the same token, I look at people, and I'm not judging anyone, and I'm not throwing stones, but I look at people that haven't been through the fire,
Mm.
and I don't want to think that way. I don't like
Yeah.
having that state of mind. That life is beautiful, that there's no problem, that there's no bad people, that everybody's honest, that every. I'm glad that I've been exposed to the ugly of the ugly, to the underbelly of this earth, to the underbelly of America, to the underbelly of our system, of our attorney system, of our prison system. I find it a blessing to have gone through those things, to be quite honest with you,
Yeah.
because I can speak from a place of knowledge and experience, and for that I don't regret it. But like I said, if I can take it all back to take away everything I caused my mom, I would, even if it meant losing all my experience. But um, I do regret, like on a personal level, a lot of the physical trauma I caused people, a lot of that stuff. Only because I've experienced what it is to lose somebody now, what it is to, and in that sense, yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's ugly. It's an ugly feeling. It's an ugly feeling, but I'm thankful for everything that I've gone through. I'm thankful for it. Um, like I said, it ain't for everybody. Listening to me talk, listening to what I say.
Yeah.
I know that there's a lot of secondary trauma from listening to things that I speak about so openly. I know that it bothers some people. I know that, but that's okay. And that's okay. I'm not here to appease anybody. I'm just here to
Yes.
share me with the world. Um, Only because I know a lot of people have experienced a lot worse, and if they were to just open up about it, they'd be in a better place. My story is nothing compared to things that I've heard in prison. My
Mm.
story is uh, rated G compared to things that I'm rated G compared to other guys that I've met on these streets.
Oh.
And I just wish they would open up about it. They wouldn't be so angry. They wouldn't be so angry. But Danny, thanks for listening to me today. I know it was a lot for you to take in. Those of you that stayed on and listened and and are following us, please share. Like Danny said, share
Yeah.
our videos. Please, you guys, go to Real Talk EP on YouTube. I'm asking you guys, please go on and subscribe. We only have 14 subscribers right now. We're really trying to beef up that channel to get off of doing these lives here on Facebook. Um, can you guys please, anyone that's watching, Real Talk EP on YouTube, subscribe. You'll start getting all of our lives. You can catch all of the other episodes. I spoke about my brother today. There's an interview with him and I on there as well, and interviews with other members, with Iggy, with that brother Danny here has his interview on there, brother Paul, and then we're gonna start bringing on some other guests as well. I was reached out by another organization. We're going to get them on next week. And then I'll continue the series on my book. Next chapter is going to be Little Sister. And
Yeah.
that's I'll talk about my sister and when she got leukemia. And I was 9 when I was told she was pregnant, 11 when she got diagnosed with leukemia. And that
Wow.
was a major change in my life, major milestone, and ultimately when I ended up homeless and running the streets. But Danny, God bless you. Thank you for being on here today.
It was an honor and a pleasure, brother. I'm looking forward to the rest of the series.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for the next interview, we're gonna have Rosa Ramos. I promised her for
Nice.
today, but she's been busy. She has a baby and then another 2 or 3 year old, awesome kids. But she's gonna join us tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Thursday. Today's
Thursday.
Thursday. Today's Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday. Friday night. All the days seem the same with this COVID blase. So Rosa will be doing an interviewee with me on Tuesday, and I mean on Friday, and we'll be sharing. And like I said, just thank you all for watching. Please pray for our nation right now.
Yes.
Um, always love your neighbor. Be kind. Be compassionate. Be empathetic. Sympathetic. Always be willing to listen. And you guys, as I always close out with, show your kids you love them. If you haven't hugged your child, hug them tonight.
Yeah.
Give them a kiss. Tell
The
them
little
you love
things.
them,
Yes.
and just tuck them in. And if you have older kids, give them a call, shoot them a text, send them a random "I love you." Send them a random "Have a good day." I love you because
Yes.
man, love is what gets us through, you guys. Until then, I love each and every one of you guys. Love your children. Brother Danny, thank you for today. Have a good day.